Hey everybody, what's going on? And welcome to Guns N' Roses Central. And I wanted to start a new series on my YouTube channel called The True Story Behind Chinese Democracy. Now, instead of doing like a 3 hour long video about the actual album, I wanted to break it up into year by years. So I'll start in 93 and then go all the way till 2008 and just talk about some of the major events during that year that sort of, helped lead to the actual album that came out in 2008. So in our first episode, we're looking at 1993. So we're not going to go through the entire year of 1993, but we'll touch on some important events. Now, in early 1993, Axl Rose and his then girlfriend, or some people claim fiance, Stephanie Seymour, actually broke up. And they'd been dating since May or so of 1991, and they had an on again, off again relationship. And this breakup supposedly affected Axl pretty deeply, and it, led to a lot of the songs that he wrote on Chinese democracy. Some people think There Was a Time was written about Stephanie Seymour. Some people think This I Love is about Stephanie Seymour, although some people think it's also about Aaron Everly as well. And during this turmoil in Axl's life, the band is still on tour. So they had played, a lot of 91 and 92 on the road. 93 was going to be no different. So Guns N' Roses kicked off 93, playing some shows in Japan, Australia, and New Zealand, before finally scaling down the production, coming back to the US and doing what they refer to as a Skin and Bones tour. They got rid of the horn sections. They got rid of Teddy's Andreas, and it was just the six members instead. And it was largely done because Guns N' Roses production costs had become so much that they weren't really making much money on tour, and Axl had a big mortgage that he still needed to pay. So they scaled things down. They booked another round of touring. They played the US, Canada, Europe, and then closed out with a couple shows in South America as well. And during the Europe tour, just as Guns N' Roses were finishing up their US dates, Gilby Clarke ended up breaking his wrist, and he was sidelined for about a month or so. And Izzy actually came back and filled in for 5 shows that Guns played in Israel, Greece, Turkey, and 2 shows in England as well. And the only reason Izzy came back was because the band owed him a bunch of money, and the only condition he would actually come back and do the shows was if they actually paid him the money he was owed. And after Izzy's last show in Milton Keynes in England, there was some bad blood between the band members and Izzy. And pretty much every show after, his last show in Milton Keynes, Axl dedicated Double Talk and Jive to Izzy. And Izzy, in his own words, in interviews he did later on, said that he didn't really even say goodbye to the band members. He just basically left because, everybody, according to him, were zombies and nobody was laughing anymore, and Axl seemed more irritated than ever. And following Izzy's departure, Guns would tour Europe for another month or so before finally closing out the Use Your Illusion tour in Argentina with 2 shows. And their last show was in July of 1993. Now, one may think, well, Guns N' Roses finished their 2.5 year world tour, so the rest of 1993 was going to be pretty relaxed for the band members. That wasn't really the case, especially for Axl. He got involved with lawsuits, they put out the spaghetti incident, they did the video for Estranged, and then they started turning their attention to what would be the next Guns N' Roses studio album. So around August of 93, September of 93, they started filming the video for Estranged, which would later be released in December of 93. Now the video is heavily influenced by Axl's breakup with Stephanie Seymour earlier that year. The original concept for the video actually had Stephanie Seymour being in the video, but because of the circumstances around their relationship and their breakup, they had to rewrite the actual video. And in August of 1993, Axl Rose filed a lawsuit against Stephanie Seymour, claiming that she'd kicked and grabbed him during a party at the Malibu home they shared, and she refused to return more than $100,000 worth of jewelry he had given her as gifts. Around the same time, there was also the Steven Adler trial that was going on, and there's actually footage of Axl testifying in court. Now, in September of 1993, Duff's solo band actually went on tour in Europe with the Scorpions, and the same month, Guns N' Roses eventually ended up making a $2.5 million out-of-court settlement to Steven Adler in respect to his 1991 lawsuit. And it was funny, at first, Steven Adler's lawyers only asked for an out-of-court settlement of $350,000. So in late September, Duff's solo album Believe in Me was finally released by Geffen Records, and it's an album he'd been recording on and off since the Use Your Illusion sessions in 1990. And Duff would be going around doing interviews, doing performances to promote his solo album, and the album would actually feature several notable guests, including his bandmates from Guns N' Roses Slash, Matt Sorum, Dizzy Reed, and Gilby Clarke. It also included Skid Row member Sebastian Bach, Rob Affuso, and Dave Sabo, as well as Lenny Kravitz, Jeff Beck, and Jerry Cantrell. So when the album was released, at its peak, the album reached 137th on the Billboard 200, and it's believed to have sold around 100,000 copies worldwide or so. Now, following the release of Duff's solo album, Axl's lawsuit still continued into the later part of 1993. So in October of 93, Stephanie Seymour actually countersued Axl. So she claimed it was Axl who attacked her, giving her a black eye and a bloody nose, angry because she had a party or held a party after he wanted to cancel it. He slapped and punched her and kicked her down a flight of stairs, claimed Seymour. When other defensive measures failed, she admitted she may have even grabbed his testicles. And the same month, Axl reached an out-of-court settlement with a St. Louis fan who claimed he was hurt in a scuffle with Axl during the 1991 St. Louis riot show. So William Stump Stevenson received an undisclosed amount of money and Axl's autograph in his scrapbook. Stevenson claimed he was injured when Axl jumped off stage and attacked him for taking pictures of the band. That show ended in a riot with about 65 people being injured. So following the month of October, Guns N' Roses would release their next studio album, The Spaghetti Incident, which was a collection of punk covers released by Geffen Records. Now, The Spaghetti Incident did not go on to sell as well as their previous records, largely because they did not do as much promotion for it and they did not tour behind it, and because it didn't really feature any original material as well. Now, with the release of The Spaghetti Incident, Guns N' Roses did come under fire for their decision to include an unadvertised cover of the Charles Manson song Look at Your Game Girl. So the track was actually kept secret. It was not included on the advanced tapes sent out to reviewers, and band manager Doug Goldstein stated, "There's a bonus track on the album, but Axl wants it to speak for itself, and it wasn't done for the critics or anybody else. It was a bonus for the fans." So the inclusion of the song caused controversy, with law enforcement and victims' rights groups expressing outrage over the inclusion. So Rose fired back at critics, saying, "The reason we didn't list that song on our album is we wanted to downplay it. We don't give any credit to Charles Manson on the album. It's like a hidden bonus track." The band considered removing the song from new pressings of the album, with David Geffen stating in a phone interview, "I would hope that if Axl Rose had realized how offensive people would find this, he would have never recorded the song in the first place." So following this controversy, Axl agreed to donate his portions of the royalties from the song to an animal rights group. And even after all these years, Look at Your Game Girl is still featured on pressings of The Spaghetti Incident. Now, the song was recorded as a message from Axl to Stephanie Seymour. Now, in 1993, earlier in the year, Axl gave an interview to Hit Parader, which was kind of interesting because Axl didn't do a lot of interviews following 1992. So in the interview in Hit Parader, he gave some hints in terms of what he wanted to see on the next Guns N' Roses album. So he said, and I quote, "We're really into letting Matt go off on his own in terms of drumming for GNR. When he goes off on his own creative sense, it's pretty amazing. I want to facilitate that getting out. I just want Matt to explode on the next record." He also talked about where his head was at in terms of songwriting in 1993. He said, "We really haven't sat down to collaborate on songs yet. I've just been working on where my head's at on things so I can approach the next record in a way that lets it go to farther extremes." So it was kind of, foreshadowing that, the next Guns N' Roses album, at least in Axl's mind, was going to sound a lot different than the Illusions records, maybe be a little more experimental. He also talked about a song that he had recorded. He said, "I wrote and recorded a new love song that I want on the next record called This I Love. That's the heaviest thing I've ever done." Now, there's a story that Axl told back in 2010 when Guns N' Roses were playing Paris. He was on stage, and Axl referred to This I Love as the only GNR song written in France. Here's the audio clip of it.
We played another city in France the other night, and it hit me during the first verse of the song that, wait a minute, I wrote this song in France.
Now, there was an interview with one of the producers from Chinese Democracy, Dave Dominguez. He talked about This I Love. He said, "This I Love is actually an old GNR song that the original GNR wrote and recorded for the Illusion Records. I like that song a lot. It took a couple of weeks to find all the tapes because they finished recording Use Your Illusions on the road, and one tape was in Paris, another was in London, and another in Sydney, I believe." Now, my hypothesis is that This I Love was recorded during 1992 when Guns were playing Europe, and then, it was also maybe recorded in 93 when they were touring in Australia as well. and then they came back to Europe back in 93 once again. So I think it may have been started, maybe he started writing it around 92 when Guns were playing that pay-per-view special in Paris, because that's around the time his relationship with Stephanie Seymour was a bit rocky. And, you know, there was rumors that she was seeing Warren Beatty, and I think maybe that's what inspired This I Love. At least that's my guess. So that does it for this episode of Guns N' Roses True Story. This is part 1 of looking at the album Chinese Democracy. Part 2 is going to involve 1994. We're getting now to the point where Guns N' Roses finally get into the studio and start working on their follow-up studio record to the Illusions records, if we're talking about original material. So I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. Let me know your thoughts down below, and be sure to hit the subscribe button if you love Guns N' Roses as much as I do, and be sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Take care.